It's like boring, repeated, yawn. If you fight again, I'm done with you. Everyone knows Bridget Jones. It's an iconic rom-com and a very popular retelling of Pride and Prejudice. What most of you may not know is that it's based on a book series. With 4 books published over 20 years, it's crazy to realize that the cinema has actually made not 1, not 2, but all 4 of these movies. And it only took 24 years. Bridget Jones is one of my favorite rom-coms. It was introduced to me by my sister, like most good things are, and I was instantly in love. Not because of Colin Firth or Hugh Grant, though they were a bonus. It's because Renee Zellweger made me immediately fall in love with the character that is Bridget. And I hope I pronounced her name right. I've never said it out loud. Unlike my other videos where I recap movies and sort of tell you how I feel about them, for Bridget Jones, we will be going through every single movie. So buckle up, get ready, and without further ado, let's dive into it. The first movie starts with her speaking through all her New Year's resolutions, and spoiler alert, throughout the movie we see her break every single one of them, all the while being endearing, majorly embarrassing, and hilarious. I would even say relatable, but she does some weird stuff sometimes, so I can't say that with chest without feeling a bit embarrassed. I've always had a thing for self-centered characters who are very amusing, which really makes sense because when I was growing up, the first book that really got me into reading was The Princess Diaries, and I enjoyed that to bits. And then along the lines, I found Georgia Nicholson, which is like, I feel the British raunchier version. And it only makes sense that when I got older, I found Bridget Jones and loved her equally. Because it's amazing to root for a messy character. I think in theory it's great to think that you're always going to be poised and confident and capture the attention in the room in all the right ways. But 99% of the time, if you're awkward and a bit clumsy, that will never be the case. Bridget at every turn makes you feel better about yourself, or at least partly seen. In the process of all that is her life, from her mom and dad possibly getting divorced to her falling slowly but surely for her boss, who is played by Hugh Grant and name is Daniel Cleaver. She also manages to make a fool out of herself in front of Mr. Darcy. He's basically marriage material personified to everyone around her, and like every good Pride and Prejudice retelling, he eventually falls for her. It does include some bumpy moments and misunderstandings. So I did say that Bridget has a thing for her boss, but I feel like I was like sort of misrepresenting it when I first mentioned it, because I was just like, oh, she has a thing. No, okay. Her boss is basically the counterpart of Mr. Wickham, and he is very good at making you believe that he is a good person. So the first time I ever watched this, I'm not talking about the rewatch to make this entire video, I low-key fell for it. Like, I knew something bad was bound to come because a good portion of the first movie is them just flirting and getting along and making you be like, wow, my girl Bridget, she's gonna have a happy ending. But because he is her boss and something about the way he behaves is just like too good to be true, it all comes crashing down. He's a playboy, he's allergic to commitment, and he's pretty privileged, lets him get away with some of the weirdest.
How do you know, Arcee Darcy?
Apparently I used to run around naked in his paddling pool.
I bet you did, you dirty bitch.
But to be fair, I also think it's in terms of the time the movie was made in. Thankfully, through every embarrassing moment, Bridget still has her friends who are sort of like her support system, but just as messy as her, to be honest. She also has a few acquaintances who are around the same age as her and know Mark as well. So one night after going to a dinner and she's leaving, putting on her coat, Mark Darcy confesses to her.
But, in fact, perhaps despite appearances, I like you very much.
Apart from the smoking and the drinking and the vulgar mother and the verbal
No,
diarrhea.
I like you very much, just as you are.
And honestly, it floored me. Also because Daniel is a dick, and as I said, everything goes crashing down eventually because, you know, she's dating her boss at work and he's a playboy, so she's not the only girl he's getting in pants. She's not the only girl he's getting his pants into. Is that the same? I don't know. I'm trying so hard to remember it. She leaves her workplace and finds a job at this sort of up and coming television show that reports the news. There, at her new job, she is still the same old Bridget Jones who makes mistakes, and I feel like it's kind of 10 times worse because now it's televised and she can always hit rewind or hit record and be like, damn, I'm terrible. But what solidifies her career is that Darcy, Mark, is a human rights lawyer currently in this major case, and they're not giving any interviews because he confessed. He said he loved her, and they bump into each other. He gives her an exclusive interview with the people, and that's when she's seen as a star of the place she works in, because it's like, how did she do it? Meanwhile, it was just her feminine wiles. Obviously, her and Mark end up together and it's sweet, but aside from the romance, there's a lot of things I really enjoy about Bridget Jones. I feel like it accurately displays the judgment you face as an older woman who does not conform to society's standards of the life you should be living, albeit in the most hilarious way possible. It also shows you the internal battle that Bridget faces, knowing that she's not conforming to those standards either. She calls herself a spinster at times, and it's not in the oh yay I'm a spinster patriarchy. It's very much, oh, I'm unlovable. Another reason I love it is because I said this in my Wicked video, how much platonic love matters, and her group of friends embodies that. The fact that there's a movie about a 32-year-old falling in love, having a supportive group of friends, and still figuring out who she is in small terms pretty awesome. And she has this really cute, healthy relationship with her dad, which every time I saw them on screen, I was endeared. Personally, on my part, I grew up in a very traditional household, so my idea of what my life would be when I aged was very much through the lens of my religion and culture. Watching Bridget Jones reminded me of that and excited me of what was to come. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, because it's not. Some of the things mentioned are out of pocket, diversity is at an all-time low, and I guess you would expect that from the things of that time, but because when I was watching it specifically to make this video, I enlisted my younger brother to watch it with me, it was glaringly obvious to me. Before we started watching it, I prefaced it with, this is one of my favorite movies, and all its faults jumped out because I didn't want him to think that the bad things I saw within that movie reflected in any way is why I liked it. To be honest, even the constant reflection of her weight was a bit of a bore to me, but I know the society we live in, and I think that it hasn't changed much over the time, so I understood that it was gonna be there. What I did like was that despite all her insecurities, she never stopped herself from going for what she wants, whether it be in romance or her career, because girl was not qualified to go and start working on TV, but she did, and now look at her. Next movie we're going to talk about is Bridget Jones's Baby, and I know, it's not in the correct order, okay? But considering the fact that when I watched these movies, I never ever saw The Edge of Reason as part 2 to the Bridget Jones series and more like a 1.5 because of the fact that it was Daniel and Mark once again. And if you know me, on and off relationships are one of those things I never get behind because it's like boring, repeated, yawn. If you fight again, I'm done with you. But somehow Bridget Jones has me wrapped around her finger. I also feel like it's the correct way to approach it, just because I feel like there's some similarities that I would like to hammer into. So without further ado, let's go to Bridget Jones's Baby. It's interesting. Bridget starts the first movie alone and ends it in a healthy, happy relationship with Mark Darcy, who loves her just as she is. And then we get to Bridget Jones's Baby, and she's in the same place again. Single, singing alone in her flat, and to make matters worse, it's her birthday. She's been told by her mother that she should have a kid, and she's not talking about with a man, because at this point, with the roller coaster that is Bridget's life, specifically men, she's just like, you can have a kid in many ways. The question though is, how did she end up here again? It's very simple. All of her friends are married or in the process of being married, have kids or in the process of having kids, and she's been split from Mark for 5 years, and based on the conversations that we are hearing, she's not quite over him yet, which makes sense. But damn. Which kind of sucks because Mark is married again, and I didn't clock it until I was like writing the script for this video. I was like, okay, when they first met, he was a divorcee. The next time when we see them in Bridget Jones' Baby, we're not talking about The Edge of the Reason. He is married, genuinely gets straight to it. When he starts a relationship, he means business. It's marriage or nothing. Finally, Daniel Cleaver, her fellow agent in Chaos, is dead, and his funeral is on her birthday. I found it funny that his funeral was on her birthday because I feel like that's something he would intentionally do just to annoy her. She's 42 now, if you didn't know, and after the left cluster experience that was her birthday, she decides she needs to change things up. Because when I said she was alone on her birthday, I meant she was alone, not just romantically. Her friends were busy too, which makes sense because they're at a different point in their lives. She decides that it's time to change up things, and it's specifically towards work and her life, and just being optimistic and going out there and doing things instead of like sort of going through the motions, which I assume she's been doing since she and Mark broke up. One thing about Bridget is that she's going to take any moment in her life and be like, you know what? I have the capacity to change. I have the capacity to be better. And then she starts self-narrating. I'm now a smart woman who does not let societal expectations dictate my happiness. Did I get that right? I feel like I tried my best, but I'm terrible at impressions. Another thing that's on her list of making my life better because I need things to change is hanging out more with her young coworker, which kind of makes sense because I said she might be a little salty from the I'm all alone on my birthday. It's the reason why she goes to a festival, and at that festival she sleeps with a strapping American man named Jack and disappears on him because she's evolved and well aware that it means nothing more, no catching feelings, alright? The next weekend she bumps into Darcy at the christening of their godchild, and once again it leads to a steamy night. Like when I say once again, I mean like, oh, first it was Jack, now it's Mark. And just to be clear here, it is mentioned that Mark and his wife are divorced, and the reason that she saw them together at Daniel's funeral is that he was just there to support him because at some point they were friends, right? Fast forward, after a test with that younger coworker who joined her at the festival, she finds out that she's pregnant. Her coworker says this:
Look, one broken, out-of-date condom I might have believed was an accident. But two, you wanted it.
which I find kind of hilarious because this is exactly what Bridget would do. Not even purposefully, she's just that type of person. It's in her nature to be that unserious. She also does not know who the dad is because when she speaks to, what's the doctor that takes care of kids? Pediatrician? She's like, the time when you slept with Darcy and Jack were equally fertile periods, so it could be either one of them. And Bridget, being Bridget, is like, you know what? I'm gonna do every single thing times two. So she goes to all these baby appointments with Mark and Jack and allows her pediatrician, I think it's a pediatrician, guys, if I'm wrong, please tell me. I don't know any things anymore. Act like these visits are the first times for both of them because I guess maybe she has like a little rotation to make it a bit fair. It works out for a hot minute before it all comes crashing down, and it's like, okay, I need to tell you the truth. And when she does tell the truth, Mark is devastated. Like, to me personally, compared to Jack, there's not much history in their relationship, right? So when Bridget told him that she was pregnant, he was elated. He genuinely had to leave the room, come back inside, and then say I'm happy, because he had to compose himself, you know, like my boy doesn't like to jump in school in front of the ladies, I guess. And throughout all of their appointments, you can see this excitement that he's going to live this life he sort of expected he would with Bridget. So when she admits that either of them could be the father, and I think to Mark it also clicks that, oh, so she's been doing what she's been doing with me, with him as well, he is sad because this idea of the life that he was gonna live is ripped from him at the moment. On the other hand, Jack is pretty much easygoing about it. He is shocked, but as I said, he does not have as much skin in the game. They've just met, and when he initially finds out that she's pregnant, he's not too interested because he doesn't seem like he ever imagined that he would have kids. Eventually, when he does come around to it again, he's just a very easy breezy guy. Jack and Mark do sort of become this weird family with Bridget because they don't know who the kid's father is.
For better or worse, fate has brought us together.
It wasn't fate, it was condoms.
So they're going to go through the term of her pregnancies together until it's the baby's born, and then from there they'll decide what they're gonna do, because that would be the time when they'll know who officially the father is, which is a high-key problematic because if you're both involved in this pregnancy and one of you is going to find it so easy to walk away after the 9 months of believing this is your child, I don't know if I feel okay with that. Bridget is also hiding the fact that she's pregnant at work. The only person other than her friends who know is her dad because they're very close. And she does express at some point that she's worried that he might be disappointed in her. But her dad, as I said, that guy, top 10, you know what I mean, is pretty supportive. She hides it from her mom because while she doesn't have a terrible relationship with her, it's not quite the same, not as seamless. But when it does come out, I die because her mom has always been a bit of a hilarious character.
Mark is this really nice American called Jack.
No, Bridget, an American? Did you have a three-way?
Mark and Jack are very much being boys, and usually I'd kind of find it annoying, but in this case I enjoyed it. Have I mentioned how handsome an older Colin Firth is? You know, maybe that played a part into it just a bit. Mark and Bridget defy convention from the get-go. When they met in the first movie, they weren't the kind of people you would see and be like, oh, they're meant to be together, right? And Jack, who is kind of a millionaire slash billionaire because of this algorithm he built that tells you what the person you perfectly match with, is actually almost 100% Bridget's match. Throughout the duration of the pregnancy, Jack and Bridget are pretty much more touchy-feely, and as I said, guy doesn't have as much skin in the game. He's just come along. There's not much history. Mark, on the other hand, who does have history with her, is just more careful. Things are going pretty well as it could be when, you know, two men are fighting for your affection. Kind of takes a terrible turn when Jack confesses to Mark that when him and Bridget slept together, shagged, he did not have a condom on, which is a lie because he clearly just wanted Bridget for himself, and Mark says, I'm gone. He does eventually admit the truth to Bridget, and in doing so, he realizes that Bridget still has feelings for Mark, which I found kind of funny because personally, if I entered something where people had so much history, I would have immediately just stepped out. But clearly I said this man is confident, so he was like, I'm in the running when he wasn't even in the game. He too then exits the journey that has been Bridget's pregnancy, and she's left alone for a bit. Mark does come at some point to visit her, and I think he confesses that regardless of who the kid is, he wants to be with her. But because this is Bridget Jones, her water breaks on him, and then she gives birth, and it brings all the people who matter in her life together, which is still her group of friends, her family, with the addition of the people she's met along the way at the place she works. Oh, and Jack is there too. Mark turns out to be the dad, no surprise there, and him and Bridget get married, and the baby is William Fitzdarcy. Bridget Jones's Bye is brilliant, and I can still remember the first time that I watched it, especially because this came out pretty late after the initial movie, because I told you I never saw The Edge of Reason as a sequel, more as a 1.5 movie, right? And then this came out and I got to watch it when it was released and sort of see the cult-like fandom that Bridget Jones has, and it was almost as good, you could even say better, despite the fact that she's very much the same goofy Bridget, you can see things that have changed because of like her going through life. And in terms of the cast and setting, it's less bland because it is set later down the line. Seeing this movie conclude with them being together was deeply satisfying as well, because it felt like the happy ending to the relationship that they had. We also see that Daniel is not dead, which kind of makes sense because at his funeral they did not have a body because they couldn't find it. And at that point I didn't know that there was going to be Mad About a Boy, and I was still pretty happy with where we were. But before we get to Mad About a Boy, the most latest released, we gotta take a step back, and I'm gonna take you to Bridget Jones, The Edge of Reason, and it's gonna be a quick one. The biggest difference is that you get to see Mark and Bridget be happy for a good part of the movie. It's effectively what happens after Happily Ever After, and it's bumpy and imperfect but still enjoyable. It also gives you an idea of how Mark and Bridget could have been broken up in between The Edge of Reason and Bridget Jones's Baby. Its point of contention in their relationship is that Bridget believes that Mark finds her embarrassing, and his co-worker Rebecca, Bridget believes that he might like her a bit more because she's this conventionally attractive, smart woman that he sees every day, and she's Bridget Jones. We even get a pregnancy scare, which Mark is excited for because I told you this man means business. But compared to Bridget Jones's Baby, it goes far worse because you can see that they've imagined entirely different lives of what they thought their children would be living, which is why you have these conversations if you're thinking about marriage, which it's alluded to. Keeping everything in mind that I just told you, she breaks up with him, and it turns out that Daniel has pivoted from working in publishing to working on TV, and that leads to the both of them working together and going to Thailand because his job is sort of educating people about historical / tourist attractions. The spark notes of Thailand is that Bridget goes to Thailand with her friend Sheza. Sheza falls in love with a young guy named Jed. She has a moment of weakness where she almost believes that comes out of Daniel's mouth and sleeps with him. Soon after, they are ready to leave, and Bridget gets arrested because Shez's boyfriend Jed tried to smuggle drugs through a gift he gave her, but because she did not have enough space in her suitcase, she gave it to Bridget, and therefore she's been held for that crime in a prison for women in Thailand. Arrested, stuck in Thailand, and depressed, she tries to make the most of the situation, but to be honest, it's a lot for any person to go through. But eventually, Mark gets her out. He thinks she slept with Daniel, so he acts like he has no part in her getting released, but he played a pivotal part because again he works in law, and I think he knows all the right people because he's also quite rich. So he's like, ding dong, I'm gonna get you out. It does come to light what he did for her because her friends were part of the process of making sure that she got out immediately, because those are real friends, right? And they get back together. But this is one thing I wanted to mention. Daniel did see Bridget get arrested, and he did not give one F at all. And so Mark goes to Daniel and asks him to step outside one more time, because this time he's not gonna beat his ass because he cheated on their friendship and slept with his wife. This time he's gonna beat him up because he disrespected Bridget and genuinely saw her get arrested and did not care at all, even though she was stuck in a foreign country. I was okay with that too. There's not much difference in Bridget from the first to the second movie, and it's because they're so close to each other that it's hard for us to observe if there's any difference at all. If anything, it feels like it starts off straight from the first is ending and explores their relationship together, which is fun because they were not together nearly enough in the first movie, which means it's not terrible, it's pretty good. She still has her friends, her parents take more of a backseat, and we get to see more of her in her new career, which is interesting because it shows you that it took time for her to get to where she is in Bridget Jones' Baby as the head producer of the show. It's an enjoyable movie, and as I said before, like, Bridget Jones is the only franchise that will see me seated watching two people get back together over and over again. and me being like, yay, it makes sense. Which is why I was excited for Mad About a Boy, because I loved Colin Firth in Bridget Jones's Baby, and I thought it would be another chapter of their relationship, just older with the kid. But then I found out that Mark Darcy would be dead, which devastated me just a bit. So what we're seeing in Mad About a Boy is actually Bridget navigate being a single mom after losing Mark, the love of her life. If you thought that what I said about The Edge of Reason was short, prepare to be enlightened. I don't want to go too much in depth in terms of Bridget Jones' Mad About a Boy, because compared to the rest of the movies, it's relatively new. So if I spoiled the last 3 movies for you, to be honest, why haven't you watched it? And if you haven't, I hope this video leads you to go and watch them, because they are quite enjoyable. Much like Bridget Jones's Baby, there are a lot of callbacks to things that have happened in previous movies, which as a spectator who has seen Bridget progress through the phases of her life, it is nostalgic. The first movie we watch begins with the new year and the resolutions to come, and the last one ends on the new year with Bridget surrounded with all the people that she loves and believing that everything is going to be okay, which is a far cry from the start of the movie where she feels like she doesn't know what to do without Darcy. She's quit her job and she's taking care of 2 kids, which is a lot, and she's a bit of a mess, but it's not the same in terms of the other movies. It clearly shows that her life is falling apart right in front of her and she doesn't know what to do about it. The romance in this movie, I believe, is actually a bonus, because I think that more than anything, Bridget Jones' Mad About a Boy is about Bridget finding her footing once more in life, and with the addition of the romance, we get to see her come to terms with the fact that she won't have a life with Mark after a particular point. It's daunting, and I think grief and loss are hard things to navigate through when you have to wake up every day of your life and take care not only of yourself but like 2 small-sized human beings and act like everything is okay. The movie surprisingly deals with all of this amazingly and still has that little extra thing as well as the fun that you would expect from any Bridget Jones movie. I watched this in the cinema and there were like 2 other people in the room, and so I cried pretty freely whenever there was a sad moment, but I also cried pretty easily when there were good ones as well, because as I said, this movie is quite heavy in terms of the topic it deals with, but somehow still manages to tell this story in such a way where you still have laughs, and it's kind of jarring just how much emotions you go through in one sitting. To be honest, I wouldn't mind getting another Bridget Jones, but as far as I know, this is the last book in the series. With the state of the film and TV industry, it's very common to see projects that could be super exciting to watch be cancelled right after filming before they've even hit the screen. Bridget Jones, the franchise as a whole, is filled with love. The fact that they committed to these characters, as I said, over 20 years ago, and we get to see the same actors reprise these roles throughout and watch them change, speaks to me on how much the people involved in this enjoy what they do. It's been an honor to watch Bridget become the woman she is and watch her navigate her life through every age that she tackles on screen, as well as see the growth that comes with it. So if you find yourself near a cinema where it's showing, or on a streaming site where you can watch it, I implore you to give it a go. So that's it on Bridget Jones. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it, and if you want to see more of me, check me out on all my other social media, still the same name, probably another S in there somewhere, and I'll see you next time. Bye!